Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. I just want to make sure. Hold on. Oh, I've got this. Hold on.
Let's see what happens here.
Oh my God. Are you
There
there?
we go. Yes.
I'm like 80 years old. Sorry.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you spending quarantine?
I'm at my house in Los Angeles.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Where are
nice.
you?
Well, I feel a little guilty about this. I left New York City. I could not stay in my apartment, so I go to this farmhouse about 3 hours upstate. So I've got a hammock and a barn and a lot of firewood, and just I've been here for like six weeks, and I'll probably be here another month or so, but I
Oh, nice.
couldn't be stuck in the city.
Yeah.
Um, so, well, I'm glad that you took some time to join us. And what a lot of people don't know is, well, your people will know because you shared it with your people. You're also going to sing a little bit.
I will. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
We
will.
won't do that. We won't do that just yet, but eventually. I wanna geek out, which is what we do normally. Geek out about spiritual stuff. We met through Richard Rohr,
Yeah.
um, who I think we both adore and is one of the great, I would say, one of the great spiritual teachers of our lifetimes. We are so lucky, I think, to have had a connection to a person like him, because I think we're going to remember Richard for a long, long time. But maybe if we're going to talk about spirituality, set up you how you were raised, and
Yeah.
you've got a Jewish background, and share a
Yeah.
little bit about how that's formed you and shaped you, because I know a little bit, but I don't even know that we've deep dived into that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Richard talks about like the kind of three act structure of life: order, disorder, and reorder. And he talks about it's good to have order in childhood, and it almost doesn't matter what tradition, but it's good for kids to have rules and boundaries and know right from wrong and feel a sense of belonging and a sense of community. And then eventually you're going to get kicked out into disorder because the modern world is disordered, right? And
Right.
that's all part of it, and people freak out about the disordered world. And it's like, well, it's kind of archetypal. It's kind of like where we head, because that's the dark wood of transformation, where you then emerge into what he calls reorder, where you find this new way, but like a kind of sadder but wiser. It's the arc of every great tale.
Yes.
So anyway, I had a really good order box. I had this, my family was we were conservative Jewish, not conservative politically, but it's there's Reform Judaism and
Right.
conservative Judaism and Orthodox Judaism. So, but we were conservative. But my parents sent me to this Orthodox Hebrew day school. So I half day Hebrew, half day English, wore a yarmulke, tzitzit, the little fringes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of like going to Catholic school as a if I was Catholic, but it was a Jewish school. And I did that until eighth grade, and then I went to a public high school. So
Uh-huh.
I had this childhood that was really steeped in Torah and
Uh-huh.
Mishnah and Talmud and Gemara and all these things. Like, I didn't. It was not quite a yeshiva, but it was close. We prayed in the morning, and I learned to wrap tefillin after my bar mitzvah. The leather
Yeah.
straps and everything. So I had this very strong Jewish background, and then I fell in love with the theater when I was 16, and that became my church. The
Mhm.
the theater was everything to me, and in some ways I followed that all the way to a career. And it's interesting. I became much more re fascinated by um, religion and spirituality, or more spirituality than religion, I would say, when I started to become successful as an actor, and I found that it wasn't a big enough container for my longing. Like it couldn't, as wonderful as the theater was, and as wonderful as getting to make a living as an actor and an artist was, it didn't quite quench the thirst I had, which was pretty enormous, around spirituality. And I also think I tasted a lot of, I love Falling Upward, which I know you've read too, but like it's a
Yes.
masterpiece,
Yeah.
masterpiece. But he talks about like the first half of life, the loyal soldier. I checked all those boxes. I got all the stuff, and I found myself, I was like, well, that's not it. Now what? You know? So that really brought me to, you know, the feet of a number of teachers, except for Richard, all of whom have kind of disappointed me in a certain amount of ways, you know, like revealed their kind of humanity. And one of the things I love about Richard is he's so alert to his shadow. He's so alert to his own folly and his own defects of character. So I find I'm really alert to that kind of stuff because I've studied with some people who were kind of pious and outwardly pious, and I've been so disappointed by a lot of spiritual teachers. That said, I would learn something from everyone, and my spiritual appetite's very omnivorous. You know, I learn from all different traditions. I just wrote a piece for One magazine, Richard's, the Center for Action and Contemplations magazine, about being a Jew who loves Jesus and learns a lot from Jesus, even though I'm not a Christian and I don't intend to become one. It's just, I feel like he was a Jew in my tradition who was saying really beautiful things. I'm going to pay attention to a lot of them.
Yes. You know, I did. It's funny what you learn about friends when you do actually like research. And so I was like, well, I should read up and see like what he said, what he's written. But I will say there was I think it was in the New York Times that had said, it was talking about how you read widely, which I know you read widely, and it had named Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufi, which is part of Islam, you know, obviously Christianity. Has there been, maybe talk a little bit about what are some of the traditions that have drawn you, and why have they? Because I'll tell you this, I've read people like Thich Nhat Hanh, and I read him because he has a sensibility for peacemaking. Or I will often read a Buddhist writer because I think they've done so much more work on meditation than my own tradition. That well of wisdom is much more shallow.
Yeah.
Is there a tradition that you'd say, like, you know, here's what sticks out in my mind. I've gone to this and I got this.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I have this foundational Jewish background. I feel that served me so well as a student of different traditions, because I think every tradition, you know, has a meditative practice, for instance. Every tradition talks about forgiveness in their own way. And yet some traditions excel at certain things more than others, I would say, right? So like Judaism, the thing that I really got from it is this sense of doubt and questions. Keep asking questions. There's no end to the amount of questions you can ask. I also one thing I love about Judaism is there's no, if you're Jewish and you don't believe in anything, no one will cast you out of a synagogue.
Right.
Like you can sit there. Right. You can participate in all the rites and rituals and everything, and be someone who doesn't believe it, but you know, feels it's valuable culturally and all that. So you know, the value on education. Like I grew up in a house filled with books.
Yeah.
I have a house filled with books. You know, it's just that was just the tradition I inherited. What draws me to Christianity is, and again, Jews have written very extensively about forgiveness, and I don't want to say this, but that they don't, but the trinity of forgiveness, mercy, and grace are words that I just meditate on quite a bit. Yeah. And you don't hear a ton of, you certainly don't hear the word grace in Judaism. That seems to be a Christian word, but just this notion of an unearned gift. I was so struck by Richard Rohr. Were you at any of his Easter Zoom services?
No.
Oh, okay. He talked about, he said, let this Easter threaten you with hope.
Yeah.
And then he said, grace is a humiliation to the ego. Mm-hmm. He said, we don't like being loved for no reason. And I was like, man, you could just meditate on that for a lifetime, right? You know? And I learned a lot, honestly, from your friend Rachel. I've read 2 of her books and a lot of Rachel Held Evans stuff, and she articulated a lot of how I feel. You know, I think there's a pattern that I see in a lot of people, and I think it's one of the reasons
about this idea. She calls it the hinterlands.
I think it's one of the reasons I respond to you and why we click. Jewish background, I feel that served me so well as a student of different traditions, because I think every tradition has a meditative practice. For instance, every tradition talks about forgiveness in their own way, and yet some traditions excel at certain things more than others, I would say, right? So like Judaism, the thing that I really got from it is this sense of doubt and questions. Keep asking questions. There's no end to the amount of questions you can ask. I also love, one thing I love about Judaism is there's no, if you're Jewish and you don't believe in anything, no one will cast you out of a synagogue. Like you can sit there. You can participate in all the rites and rituals and everything, and be someone who doesn't believe it, but feels it's valuable culturally and all that. So the value on education. Like I grew up in a house filled with books.
Yeah.
I have a house filled with books. It's just that was just the tradition I inherited. What draws me to Christianity is, and again, Jews have written very extensively about forgiveness, and I don't want to say this, but that they don't. But the Trinity of forgiveness, mercy, and grace are words that I just meditate on quite a bit. Yeah. And you don't hear a ton of, you certainly don't hear the word grace in Judaism. That seems to be a Christian word. But just this notion of an unearned gift, I was so struck by Richard Rohr. Were you at any of his Easter Zoom services?
No.
Oh, okay. He talked about. He said, "Let this Easter threaten you with hope."
Yeah.
And then he said, "Grace is a humiliation to the ego." Mm-hmm. He said, "We don't like being loved for no reason." And I was like, man, you could just meditate on that for a lifetime,
right?
And I learned a lot, honestly, from your friend Rachel. I've read 2 of her books and a lot of Rachel Held Evans stuff, and she articulated a lot of how I feel. I think there's a pattern that I see in a lot of people, and I think it's one of the reasons I respond to you and why we click is I respond very well to spiritually heartbroken people, like people who had the order box, and then through whatever twists and turns of their life, it got shattered, and they had to go through their own dark night of doubt or soul lostness or hurtness. Oh, I love the Barbara Brown Taylor book. I'm just about to finish it, Learning to Walk.
Yes.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yes.
Yeah. It feels to me there's this kind of, when you're in the order box and when you're ruled by the tribe, right? There's this, don't leave this box. Don't leave this box. If you leave this box, the following will happen to you. And there's a whole nightmare scenario. A lot of it is eternal damnation, which is like child abuse, right?
Right.
And but it feels to me that the arc of every great story is leaving home. The arc of every great artist is leaving home. That you have to leave the box and then be out on the high seas of whatever, and then find your own inner resources.
Right.
That then there's a lot of things my parents taught me that I went, yeah. And then the world has taught me the lesson that they taught me, but it's now mine because I learned it on my own. Mm-hmm. I didn't just regurgitate something, Mm-hmm. So I actually, and in that way I can find a lot of forgiveness from my parents, just because it's like, they you can't learn something until you've really tasted it. But a big part of my story is, and I've only gotten more recently bolder about talking about this, but I've worked a lot with plant medicines and with shamans, with ayahuasca, with San Pedro, and some peyote, like just these different, shamanic kind of spirit technologies that taught me as much as anything. And they also, there's a lot of traps in there, and there's a lot of, it's not a, I'm not endorsing it for everyone. It's not for everyone, but it was for me. And I learned a lot from it.
It's funny you say that, because we're going to actually talk more about this. I've got a guy, Propaganda, who will be here on Monday. And I talked, I think last week, to Audrey, who Audrey Saad.
Yeah, of course.
Who's so lovely and wonderful. And she actually brought it up, and he and I are going to talk about it. But she had talked about this idea. She calls it the hinterlands. That you grow up and there's like that thing across the river, and people say, don't go there. There's monsters there that will hurt you. Don't do it. You have to stay away from it. It's bad, bad, bad. And then what happens is like you slip out, under the cover of night, and you cross the bridge, and you actually find something really wonderful there, and your spirit is stirred, and your imagination is sparked. And that's when everything really falls apart, because you go, if they lied to me about that, if that wasn't true, then what is true? And I guess it falls apart, but in, to use your language, it really is more, it's a send off. It sends you on a spiritual journey. And I had those same moments where somebody flicked that toothpick and that whole thing just sort of collapsed, and you go, okay, I can either walk away or I can start to rebuild it again.
Yeah. It's almost like if you're brought up in a tribal mentality and you're warned about other people that aren't in the tribe. Right. And then you meet those other people, and they're some of the loveliest, kindest, most compassionate, most forgiving people you've ever met. And you think, wait a minute, I was sold a bill of goods. Like, you're in fact, you're bringing me closer to truth and the heart of things. Yeah. So it's kind of what Richard would say. A lot of non-Christians are better Christians than a lot of Christians.
Yes.
Because I'm really allergic these days to labels. Like I have a bunch of Hindu statues in my house. I love Hanuman and Ganesh and Shiva and Saraswati, and every once every once in a while I'll snap a photo and throw it up on Instagram, and people are like, "You're Hindu?" And it's like there's this feeling that people want to own you. Or they want to classify you. I find, even being, I even recoil at like being called an actor is always like, wait, no, don't. I'm more interested in dimensionality than like some sort of narrow definition of things, because I always feel like we're so much more vast and varied and complex and contradictory than we're allowed to be somehow, and I love, Richard's, his container is very big for like everything belongs. That's one of the names of his books, and someone sent me a quote of his recently that I love so much, like, bad spirituality says only here, only in this church.
Right.
And mature spirituality says always and everywhere.
Yes. There was something that I read that sounded interesting to me, and maybe I've heard this story, maybe I've forgotten it, but it resonated with me because I feel like this is, for me, a part of my story. But you said, and I wrote this quote down, "I initially waded into spiritual waters because I wanted some anxiety relief." And I will tell you I didn't wade into spiritual waters. I was thrust into religion.
Right.
It was not a choice. It was against my will, so to speak. And it didn't give me anxiety relief. It gave me anxiety. and
Right.
because the religious context I was in, and I had to do all this to say I had to do totally different work to find a kind of spirituality that was liberating rather than constricting. But
Right.
the liberation or anxiety relief for you was a draw. And that to me was so fascinating because I think that people will often think of that as the opposite. That spirituality is just another thing that you have to worry about. But for you to say that you went for anxiety relief, maybe like tell me what that means for you or what that looked like for you.
Well, we should be clear about what words we're using, because you're talking about religion, and
Right.
I'm using the word spirituality. And by
That's right.
spirituality, I mean a bigger container that draws from all sorts of different traditions, that
Yeah.
uses contemplative practices. And what I initially meant was, when I started meditating, I learned transcendental meditation, and I think it was because of anxiety relief. It was that um, I it's so much better now, but I've historically had a very stern taskmaster in my head, a very shaming kind of the
Yeah.
finger wagging kind of, like, you're a terrible person, why did you do that, you don't deserve it, like all this
Yes.
stuff. And the voices in my head were so strong and ever present that I found I needed something. I needed an alternative. Um, I needed some other healthier voices, or I needed some pressure valve release around those voices. So meditation was the first, and that was right when I was around 27, maybe 27. I think I learned, and it was my first kind of wading into spiritual waters, because, like I said, from the time I was raised Jewish, but once the theater got a hold of me, I was just an acting obsessed
Right.
teenager, college guy, and I was very, I didn't have much use for. I mean, I still probably, my heart could be opened by, like, a beautiful song or a prayer. Like, I never had an atheism flirtation. I was never like, this is all molecules and science, and there's something in me that resists that, because I'm like, I, I don't know. Like, I believe in science. I also, what's this? Like, what's the thing that I just, it's like a riddle. Like, I can't get
Yeah.
past some sort of animating consciousness,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, for me, um, uh, initially, yeah, it was about anxiety relief. And now learning about, for instance, like we said, forgiveness, grace, and mercy is, uh, the concept of, like, mercy or grace is, there's no more calming uh, a thought or force that I can contemplate than uh, a divine whoosh that is just going to bless me and hold me for no reason other than I'm alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that to me is anxiety relief. Like, meditating on the unearned gift of grace, or um, the just love in its purest form, not corrupted by possession or conditions.
Yeah.
To meditate on that gives me anxiety relief.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's very hard to exist in the world, certainly right now, but in our time, anxiety is an accompaniment to us. It's just like, if your eyes are open, you're going to deal with some anxiety.
Right. 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 Right.
You know?
Right. 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 Yeah, you're talking about meditation, and for me, meditation is like it's the thing that keeps me from losing my freaking mind in the midst of everything that is going on right now. And I do it in the morning, and I'll burn sage, and I have like a singing bowl I use, and I really I have to do it, and
Yeah.
I burn candles and the whole thing, and I really have to just unplug from reality, or maybe plug into reality, as it
Yeah.
were. Capital R. So,
Hey, Jonathan, I'm just going up to my room because it's so hot down here. It's driving me crazy.
oh
But
yeah, no
keep
worries.
talking. I'm still with you.
No worries.
All right.
I think a lot about religion or faith or whatever as it expresses in kind of it's the orthodoxical component, the beliefs. Do you believe this,
Right.
or do you believe that, or do you believe this, or do you believe that? And I used to think that was like the heart.
Right.
of spirituality. And now I think of the orthopraxy, right? The practice. Like, what do you like? What are the ways that you're practicing your faith, rather than what are like the propositions that you believe? And so, meditation is one. Do you have like regular practices that you do that keep you just sane in the midst of the crazy?
What's the word you use? Orthopraxy?
Yeah,
I love that word.
yeah.
Um, yeah, meditation. I meditation, prayer, like getting uh really. Do you do you know Nick Cave? Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Do you know that? Yeah, he has a weekly thing he writes called the Red Hand Files. It's an email that you can sign up for, and it's fantastic. And his last one, I'll send it to you. It was about prayer and the power of prayer, and he talked about whether something's actually listening to you is of no consequence.
Uh-huh.
Whether something actually hears you, he said, the fact is prayer works, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it might just be a dialogue with our innermost, which you could call God, you know, but there's something about that, quieting, that disconnection. You know, I heard this thing that was really wonderful that said, prayer is talking to God, meditation is listening to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to have prayer be a wish list or
Yeah,
a request form,
yeah,
and just really, you know, thy will be done. Like, what is, because I'm clear that whatever is the divine will for me will be enjoyable.
right.
My ego tells me, no, if you do what, you know, God wants you to do, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be like, you're gonna have to do something. And I try to remember, like, no, that will be my joy. Like,
Mm.
that will put me in the flow of Dharma. Like, I will be joyful doing that. And I can feel when I'm in like a creative flow, or when I'm connecting in a very deep way with my creativity and with other people. I know that that's got a divine tinge to it. You know, it's not, I don't believe that I'm going to wake up and it's like, you know, you're supposed to be a banker in Bangladesh, like, and do microfinance. Like, I don't know that I love microfinance, but I don't think that's going to be my
Right.
path. I have like a men's group that I do once a week, and that's been super powerful to, you know, Richard does a lot of that work too, but like really creating safe spaces to be at your snottiest, neediest,
Right.
whiniest,
Right.
most unlovable, and find that you are in fact like more lovable in those spaces.
Right.
Reading, um, moving my body, like it can be yoga, it can be dance, like just really um, acknowledging that I'm not just a, you know, this body isn't just to transport this head around, but it's like it's a big deal to have one of these and to maintain it. And sometimes I have to really kick myself to do that. It's not my, uh, I'm not one of those people that jumps out of bed and is like, let's go on a 5 mile jog right now. Like, that's not
Right.
my,
Right.
that's not my
Right.
thing.
Right.
So yeah.
I mean, but so I guess if you're going throughout your life and you're doing these practices, for me, I feel like I'm lucky because I write about spirituality, I talk about spirituality, I get to be paid to do that. So if somebody says like, how does your spirituality interact with your vocational life? It's not even a question I have to answer. But is there a connection for you between your spirituality and your art, your artistry? How does that, how has, I guess maybe this is what I would say, is you feel more and more open to the capital U universe. How has that changed the way that you live as an artist, as a creative, or if at all? Maybe you just, maybe it's just a container for you and it's a separate container.
No,
But
it's a great
for me,
question. Yeah, it's a great question. Let me try to tease out an answer, because it's different for different things. Like, as an actor, for instance, um, you know, uh, a lot of times, like, there's something mystical, and it's always been this way, about why I get a role when I get it. And I find that I sometimes don't even know it until I'm in the middle of playing the role, why I had to get that role and what it's teaching me and why I was ready to play it and what it asked me to step into. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
there's and those are the roles you get. You
Yes.
just get them because they are for you. Your DNA matches the character. You can't not get the role. And then there are other roles that you really want. They might be cool. You might think they're great. You're not going to get those because it's not like part of your. There's nothing in your journey that needs you to play that role. There's other roles that you got to play. You know. So I try to trust that, and I don't, you know, once I was on a big hit TV show and had been on Broadway, like I had so far exceeded my Midwestern dreams of what I was going to do. And
Right.
I found the fuel that I was using for whatever got me all those things was not, um, it wasn't as, you know, what's flammable or something. Like I needed like a new
Yeah.
kind of fuel. And I found over the last couple of years, I really, I act when I want to act or when the right role comes along. Like
Yeah.
I'm not one of those actors that's like, I can totally not act for a while and be absolutely fine. I'm not, I have so many other things that I love to do. And I'm so glad that I had the time and space to find out what those were. But, you know, writing is I really battle this kind of introvert extrovert thing where I toggle back and forth between kind of look at me, don't look at me, you know,
Yes. 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 Yes.
and I have a real, I think maybe some threes are like that because we're both threes, right?
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, and I'm also a four wing, so I've got the kind of like journal writing, light a candle, be cozy, aren't I unique kind of four stuff going on,
Uh-huh.
and so uh, you know, there's a part of me that like once I directed two movies and I was like, oh no, I think I'm a film director. I think I'm a, you know, and now I'm writing songs and getting more joy from that than I ever could have imagined. And I don't know what I am. I'm just a person who like likes telling stories, and sometimes they're 3-minute stories, and sometimes they're 90-minute stories, and sometimes I'm a person in an orchestra of another person's, you know, symphony or whatever. If those are the right terms. And other times I'm the captain of the ship and doing it. And other times I'm just here playing
Yeah.
songs and putting them up on YouTube, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like, to me, it's about story. Like the thing, I'm a narrative person in my head. That's why I loved the stories in the Bible, like, cause they're great. They're just
Right.
great stories. I loved the Edith Hamilton mythology book when I was growing up, you know,
Right.
like tell me a story. Like that's what I love. And I almost don't understand things unless there's a narrative attached to them. Like, you know, like money, for instance. I do not understand money unless you use metaphors. Like, you have to tell me, like, stocks are the accelerator and bonds are the airbag. And I'm like, okay, I got it. But I don't
Right.
understand. I can't
Right. Right.
understand
Right.
it outside of some analogy, you
Right.
know? So, you know, the people I respond to, teacher, they'll all be great storytellers. And, but to me, story is spirituality because what is all this? This is, and a lot of traditions talk about that, you know, that this is a grand story. I love Terence McKenna, who's this great, he's now dead, but he was this great ethnobotanist. He was a big proponent of psychedelics and wildly articulate guy. But he said the thing to understand is that we are trapped in a very elaborate work of art, you know? And I sometimes think about that, like, this thing is a masterpiece. Like this, whatever's going on is unbelievable.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You said something, and it's just making me think about something that a spiritual teacher told me years ago, where I had been outed publicly, and it was very painful, and I thought my career was over. I had written 2 books. I was under contract for a third book. I thought I'd sort of lived the dream. And this person said to me that the way of life is first that you draw from your talent, and that your talent can take you so far, but it can only take you so far.
Yeah.
And then a person has to have soul, which often will require a breaking, that you have to be broken open.
Yeah.
And that will release vulnerability. It will release sort of the true you, the true self. The ego can fade away. And I found that really to be true. What I wanted to do was just to go back and rely on my talent again,
Yeah.
because that was so safe. And I knew people, I knew it worked,
Yeah.
but eventually I had to tap into another power source, right? And for me, that the spirituality was that thing, which is what you're saying. I'm interested before you, I don't want to take all your time, and I do want you to play some music. And I do want, by the way, to say everybody should subscribe to your newsletter,
Oh yeah.
which I love.
Thank you.
You don't send it out all the time. It's sort of infrequent.
It's like every 2 months, although I've got another one kind of queued up, and I only sent the last one out like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can sign up at my Twitter page or my Instagram page, like has the signups. And it's just I write a kind of, what is it? It's like an essay-ish inspirational thing. I mean, that sounds whatever, but it's, people really like them. I've been doing them for a couple of years. And then I include things that I'm watching and reading and I'm being inspired by. So
anyway, I really do like, because you're a naturally spiritual person. So when you're writing, maybe it's like stream of consciousness. The spirituality is coming out, the depth is coming out, the humanity is coming out. I found it very just surprising. It wasn't what I expected to be. It's very surprising. So you're not trying to make money off of people. You're you're just starting a conversation that matters. And I found that to be very
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, those are I'm making this up as I go. Like, I'm making this up as I go. I know that if I get excited about something and it feels pure, like, go for it. Like, I trust that I have that compass.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started sharing at that level with people,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people get them now, it's really been great.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I think one of the reasons I loved acting was because it was this umbrella where misfits and, I was like a well-liked person growing, but I always felt like an oddball, or I was very insecure and self-conscious as an adolescent. And when I got to the theater, I was just like, oh, I'm home. Like, these are the people that I relate to and that see me and that I see them, and we're going to put on a show and we're going to, make out and have fun. And I mean, it's just the best, right?
Yeah.
And then I always feel like art is a great, almost like a sonar signal that goes off, and it says, like, is anyone else vibrating on this frequency? Is anyone else having these thoughts and feelings and fears and hopes and dreams and whatever? And, when I can share at that level and then people actually respond and they say, yes, it makes the world smaller. It makes me feel less alone.
Yes. Yeah.
It makes me feel less, I don't know, just like I'm part of something, like I'm part of a grander web than just someone that's like, I don't know, like disconnect. Like, doesn't religion mean to knit back together or like to stitch back together?
Right. So,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So in its ideal thing, it's about reconnection, weaving some sort of tapestry that can, give someone warmth. I don't know why this is just leaping off that analogy. A friend told me about a shaman, like a medicine man in some indigenous culture, and they said, "Can you give us the secret can you give us your greatest medical secret?" And he said, "The greatest medicine that has ever been invented is that if someone is cold, you give them a blanket."
Oh.
And I just was like, all right, yeah. Yeah.
I do want you to play some music, because you have been writing some, like, and I'm going to plug in my phone while I do this so that I don't die. But you've been writing quite a bit of music. In fact, in the midst of all of this, I don't know, some people, I guess, this is surprising too, if they haven't followed you that closely, but you actually have a band. And I read an article, and I remember reading about the band when I was doing some research, and I was like, yeah, Josh wouldn't agree with that. But it said you had formed a religious band. Did you see that article ever? I was like, a religious band with Ben Lee. But if anybody doesn't know, Radnor and Lee, it's like, how do you describe it? It's kind of like folky. Some of it's kind of rocky. It's deep, but it's just you two. And
Yeah.
you guys, I saw you play that one time on the Lower East Side, and you play around, you tour a little bit. Um, so music is a big part of it, and then you've been writing some music during this whole cluster. Um, Tell me about what that has been like. Is it a place to express grief? Is it a place where you're channeling hope and inspiration? Like, what has music been for you in this moment?
Uh, yeah. Well, I started writing songs with Ben about 6 years ago, and we just had so much fun with it that Ben was like, let's make a record. And then we put the record out, and then people liked it and wanted us to come play. So we did some touring. We ended up in South America on this crazy Brazilian Argentinian tour, and it just kind of caught fire on its own. We have a new record that was supposed to come out May 8th. We're pushing it a little bit for obvious reasons, but I love this new record, and I think in some ways it clarifies what the band is. I think after you heard the second record, you would have less questions about like who we are and what we are. It's kind of, you know, like a 70s Laurel Canyon singer-songwriter,
Oh yeah.
psychedelic, melodic.
Yes.
It's just I really like this record, and I'm super excited for people to hear it. We're going to release a video in the next couple weeks from one of the songs called Simple Harmony. And then about 3 years ago, I started playing guitar, and Ben was like, let's be a two guitar band. Like, we can really expand the sonic palette of, if, you know, if you're holding down rhythm, I can do other interesting stuff, and we'll have so much of a fuller, richer sound. And I just exploded with songwriting. I got pretty good pretty quickly because I started playing at Radnor and Lee shows kind of quickly, like way quicker than I should have, you know.
Right.
But it's kind of the best way to learn. Is like I was playing in front of paying audiences very quickly, and then I've studied. I have a teacher in New York. When I'm in New York, I have one in LA. I haven't done a ton lately, but of lessons. But I just write a song. I write songs all the time, and whenever something occurs to me, like I get a good idea, or even just fiddling around with a melody, and something will happen. And I just started a YouTube channel a couple weeks ago, and I'm posting songs like every day or every other day, and people are really digging them. And in some ways, like if you respond to like the newsletter or what we're talking about now, it's like I try to get that in a song.
Yes.
You know, I try to, and so that kind of textual stuff married to melody and kind of distilled, right? I always loved prayers, like certain songs in synagogue, like would give me chills, you know, when you're returning the Torah to the Ark, or gospel music, or always been moved of like the Psalms of David, like just the idea that a human being could pen like love songs to the divine, the Sufi poets. Like I'm so moved by that, and I also, there's something about a lot of modern religion. We're saying old prayers, right? We're saying prayers that were written in the 1800s, 1700s, or like old prayers, and some of them are beautiful and still have a, you know, quite a frequency to them. But I also feel like, and I think Audrey writes really unbelievable like modern prayers. I don't know if she would even classify it that way anymore, but I love when you hear something like hot off the press that's like, oh no, this is a prayer, you know. And I've written like actual prayers. I've set prayers to music. I've done all this stuff. So it feels to me like a great container to hold all my interests, which is like interest in spirituality, interest in psychology, interest in rhythm and rhyme. I'm super interested. I'm word obsessed. You know, I love landing on the right word. I do a lot of, you know, I've always done crossword puzzles ever since college. So like I love when things fall in the right place, right? That's why I love editing movies, because it's like you get the right cut and you delete the right scene and the thing flows. So there's something about music, it appeals to, it's almost like mystical math or something in my brain. I just love it. And then if you hit on a melody married to a lyric that moves you, you can assume, hopefully, that it would move others. Right. You know, if you trust that you have some sense of these things. Right. So, you know, I feel like I'm at the beginning of this songwriter journey, and also, it's just been the best. I mean, it's just been the best.
Well, you posted a couple of songs lately, and everybody should go check out your YouTube channel and watch them all. Well, first of all, what they should do is also go to Spotify and listen to Radnor and Lee, because I love your album, and I think people will love your album. But I'll make it dealer's choice. If there's a song for you for this moment that that you feel is a song that maybe people need to hear. If people are, have stuck around here, they're people who are spiritually open to some degree or spiritually curious, and everybody's sort of wading through the waters of what's going on right now, which is horrible in varying degrees.
Yeah.
What would be the song you would choose?
This wasn't what I thought I was going to play, but let's do it. Might take me a moment to tune, so
Okay.
I'll just tell you this song. I wrote this when I was in New York. I was doing a TV show called Rise.
Which, by the way, I loved that show.
Oh, thanks. I loved it too. I
I
can't believe they didn't bring it back. It was so crazy.
I loved it, and I also loved because it was a show about a show, which is one of my favorite Broadway shows of all time.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Hey, have you seen Mary Neely do those things on Twitter? Those she's in quarantine, she's by herself, and she's singing along to these cast albums, perfectly lip synced, but in character, and she edits them so it, like she does the whole scenes. It's unbelievable. It's like one of the great quarantine art projects going on right now. Her name's Mary Neal.
I'll check it out. I'll check it out as soon as we're done, because that would be right up that would be right up my alley.
It's just pure joy what she's doing. Let me make sure. Oh yeah. So this is I mean, I don't know who's watching, but this feels like I could get away with playing this song. I haven't played this in a while. It's called God Be With Me.
Oh.
You go by many names. The nearest one's the breath. You're there at every birth, every moment, every death. God be with me. God be with me. Oops, that's high. Please be with me. I thought in order to be loved, had to be the perfect boy. But you love me in my brokenness as much as in my joy. God be with me. God be with me. Please be with me. May my tongue be free of slander. May my mind be free of judgment. May my hands be free of violence. May my eyes be free of lust. May my ears be free of gossip. May my blood be free of anger. My path free of temptation. My body free of pain. May my lips be filled with prayer. May my days be filled with kindness. May my years be filled with friendship. May my soul be filled with light. May my heart be filled with innocence. May my home be filled with love, my work with inspiration. May my life be filled with God be with me. God be with me. Please be with me.
Whoa.
I realized as I was playing that I think I play it one capo down, but that's why I had a harder time with that note. But thanks.
Whoa, that
Yeah.
was, let me tell you, the one that got me when you talk about being, and this is your threeness leaking out, I'm sure, and it's mine too. But being the little boy who's trying to earn it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. That was so, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Really. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have that anywhere? It's not recorded. It's not posted. It's not whatever.
It might be up from like when I did it somewhere with Carenza Peacock, who I play violin with. But I'll get that. I'll get that up on YouTube. I'll throw that out for you.
When you do, let me know. Make sure that I see it because I'll share it. I'll share it. I would love that.
Okay, for sure.
Well, thanks for giving me 51 minutes of your time. I know your time is very valuable, but I appreciate it just because
I mean,
I appreciate your friendship, and it's good to connect with a human.
oh my God, yeah. I'm so glad we connected, and let's do it again. It's great talking to you on and off the record.
Yes, on and off the record. And as always, I always say this to my friends, but I look forward with great anticipation to the day when we will be able to physically be together again. So
Yeah.
I hope you are well, and wish you only good things and good blessings, and we'll chat soon.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you later, man.